Today is episode 39 with Dr. B.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, ADDers, I am so glad that you could join me today. One of the episodes that you all are listening to the most is episode 27, figuring out where to start when so much needs your attention now. And so I decided it's important for you to understand what some of the steps are that you need to be taking in order to be successful in getting a handle on all these moving parts of your life that need your attention now. You know, I talk a lot about pre-skills. What do I mean by that term? Well, pre-skills are whatever skills you need to learn or master in order to do what you want or need to do, and you won't be able to do it without pre-skills. Example, you don't work with a financial budget and your bills need your attention. Assuming that you have the funds to pay them all or some of them and need to make arrangements on others, the goal is to bring your financial situation current for everything. So what kind of skills will you need in order to achieve this goal? Well, you need the ability to focus your attention when and where you need to. You need the ability to regulate your emotional state when and if emotions arise about your finances. Feelings that might arise are shame, embarrassment, or even distress. You need the ability to detach yourself from this task and work with it just doing business, rather than it being a reflection about you. You need the ability to follow through on your tasks and keep your word to yourself and do the things when you commit to do them. For the filler to the main pieces, you need the ability to make phone calls, write checks, or make payments online. You need to know how much money you have, how much you currently owe, what you can afford to pay now for payments. You need to know what's coming up in the next week or two or for the whole month. And you need some form of a budget or a financial structure or a tool to work with to track your financial life and be able to stay consistent with it. This is an example of what I mean by pre-skills to a task. Without these pre-skills, even if you have the money and you're good with math, you might not be able to successfully attend to your financial life because you're missing some pre-skills. Make sense? I hope so. I know it sounds like a lot, and perhaps it is. And over time, once you've developed these skills, you won't be needing to develop them every time that you address your financial matters or even other matters, because many of these pre-skills are needed in other areas of your life besides finances. And no, I'm not saying that you need to not pay your bills or take care of your financial matters until everything is developed, these pre-skills. What I'm saying is that once you do develop them, taking care of your financial matters is going to become easier and more enjoyable, and hence a great reason to develop these skills. So how do you know what pre-skills you need to develop? Great question. The way I learned what mine were was to work backwards. I wrote down my ultimate goal, which using this example would be to get current with bills and financial matters. Working backwards, in order for that to take place, I need to know how to do all the things that I talked about a few minutes ago. And if I know that I don't have the ability or the knowledge of how to do those things, then those are the pre-skills that I need to learn how to do, because they're going to stop me. And I'm going to end up procrastinating on getting started or finishing up because I lack the skills and I can't. Not because I don't want to, but to those who don't know that I'm missing these skills, it just looks like I don't care about my responsibilities and that I'm a procrastinator and that I never take care of my responsibilities. And you know what? That's a hurtful thought when others see me that way. I imagine it would be for you too. What kind of pre-skills might you need? Certainly clarity about your financial goals and self-awareness about how you feel about money would be two important ones. If you have a scarcity mentality and continually earn less than you need because of your beliefs about money, before you can really get a handle on your finances long-term, I would think that you would want to address these scarcity beliefs. I've learned over the years that things aren't necessarily as simple as they seem, and that many things are much simpler than I think. I've learned that when I have all the information and the tools that I need to get a task done, and I have the confidence to achieve my goal, because I have the competence, which is all the skills that I need in all the areas that I'm addressing, then the task gets done. Unless, of course, I choose again, or slip out and exit, or I sabotage myself for some other reason. I posed a question years ago, and it was, if you were able to focus on what you need to focus on, when you need to focus on it, and how you need to focus on it, and complete your tasks, and if you were able to regulate your moods or emotions when you needed to and how you needed to, so you didn't become overwhelmed or derailed by your emotional life, would those two solutions address the majority of the challenges that you experience from your ADHD? The answer I got years ago was a definite yes. What about your answer? Is it a definite yes? Imagine being able to master these two areas of your life. This is truly what I mean by pre-skills. These are the prerequisites to your success in so many areas of your life. I can teach you strategies for following through or prioritizing or organizing or better communication with loved ones. However, if you can't regulate your focus and your emotional state, you're going to have difficulty mastering the strategies and the tools. And there's something else that I noticed. There's this lack of sense of urgency in those with ADHD until the urgency comes crashing in on you from the outside, but no sense of urgency to get into action and follow through from within yourself, at least in most cases. And what about your criteria for the decision that you need to make? Do you have any? Or rather, do you have the type of criteria that's going to empower you to make good decisions and know why you made them? Without that, how could you possibly learn from your mistakes or your outcomes? I've talked a lot about these topics in episode 27, and it's important for me to talk about them again in a different context so that you can understand their importance and why pre-skills are essential to your initial and your ongoing success. In this episode, I'm not concerned about whether or not you've gotten a diagnosis or assessment, or whether or not you know with certainty that you even have adult ADHD. What I'm more concerned about here today is that you know that there are pre-skills to learn and pre-steps for you to take that you may not have been aware of. And these are essential for your success in designing and living a happier and more productive life as an adult in today's world. And remember, your relationship with yourself, how you value yourself, and how you take care of yourself sets the bar for how you live your life and what you say yes or no to. It's never too late to get started on this journey if you still have the breath of life in you and your wits about you. And if you're younger than my 66 years young and just starting on this journey, that's great. You'll have so many more years of a happier and more productive life once you access and address whatever pre-skills you're missing and you master them. How exciting is that? And if you're my age or older, I know this is the happiest I've been in my lifetime, and it just keeps getting better. I trust that you can be happier, more productive, and ultimately more successful once you get the pre-skills and the tools that you need to take you to the next level of your personal development. And as one of my teachers put it, what got you here won't get you there. So you may as well go for it, even now. And while you're going for it, remember to practice cultivating resilience so that you can bounce back from the adversities that you're going to face as you meet the challenges that you have to face and you grow from them. Seriously, I think the encouraging point here is that there's very crystal clear reasons for our failures and our successes, which means that we can all change what needs changing, whatever our ages. We can gain the competence that we need where we need it, and we can increase our successful outcomes, our happiness, and our productivity tremendously. Remember, not achieving your goals or objectives thus far doesn't make you a failure. It only means that you failed to achieve an outcome, which is behavioral. but that your value as a human being is still intact, since you are not what you do or don't do. You're more than that. You are not defective or less than as a human being. You're just in need of learning some more things about yourself to discover the pre-skills and the tools that you need for your own success. And I hope that you're going to find some of what you need here with me as you listen to each episode. I'm curious, from what you've heard me share so far today, are you gaining insights into some of your missing skills? I hope so. We're getting closer to today's 3 important points with relevant stories, an action step, and a favorite quote of mine. So let's keep going. As I said a bit earlier today, your relationship with yourself is critical to your success with what follows. If your relationship with yourself is lacking much of what I've been talking about in so many of the other episodes, then this is literally your first pre-skill to be developed. Because until you can truly create and consistently sustain a healthy relationship with yourself, where you're able to give to yourself what you need to in a consistent way, your odds of building out the rest of your life successfully are pretty slim. In this episode, I'm going to explore the many pre-skills that are essential for you to design and cultivate and master a happier and more productive life across all areas of your life. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it. Today's 3 important points are accurately assessing and identifying your missing pre-skills, starting to learn the pre-skills that you need for greater success, and maintaining your ongoing awareness of possible missing pre-skills.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, grade free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to being an adult with ADHD in today's world. It's almost story time, but first, your wins. I encourage you to acknowledge and celebrate them every day because they matter. Every win that you acknowledge and celebrate with emotional authenticity is changing your neurology, meanings, and mindset in a positive way. Seems like a great return on your time investment to me. And please don't shortchange yourself by thinking that it's pointless or stupid to reward yourself for the things that you're supposed to do. That couldn't be further from the truth. Are you really going to wait until something huge happens to celebrate? Seriously, does something huge happen every day? Probably not. But the kind of wins that I'm talking about do. And based on the feedback that I get from the students in my program, this regular practice of celebrating their wins is changing their lives. So what's it going to be for your wins? Perhaps you risk telling someone how you feel about him or her. That's a win. Or maybe you picked up an old hobby over the weekend that you haven't engaged in for years. Certainly a win. Or perhaps you decided to begin working on your lack of career clarity and getting clear about the specifics of what you want so that your job search is going to be more successful. That's definitely a win. Whatever you choose is up to you. However, I want you to choose something and celebrate it right now, either aloud or to yourself. I want you to really feel that win and acknowledge that at least one thing has gone right in your day, is right about you, even if everything else looks bleak right now. I get it. And that doesn't take away from the fact that at least one thing has gone right today or is right with you. You are a precious child of this universe, and you are called a human being, not a human doing, for good reason. You don't have to earn your value. You were born with it. Your value comes from who you are, not what you do. Got it? There's reasons why you are where you are in your life, and that's unique to you. And I hope that at least one of these stories is going to resonate with you and be of benefit. So let's keep going. Transitioning to our first story. Rob was a math whiz, and he graduated the top of his class. He went on to become a CPA at a high-profile firm, and he was doing quite well in his career. However, his personal life was another story. Given his academic achievements and his field of expertise, no one would ever suspect that he was unable to manage his own financial life. He felt tremendous shame, and he kept this mostly to himself. Rob was thoroughly confused by how different his academic and his work life were from his personal life. He even made the cover of an esteemed magazine in his field just 6 months earlier. At work, he was able to put his analytical mind to work and crunch the numbers and work with them as if they were pieces of a puzzle to be solved and to create the most attractive outcomes possible. On the home front, Rob knew that he made plenty of money, yet he couldn't even get his bills paid on time. And he'd been sent to collection agencies on several occasions. How could this be the same guy? He wondered if he was intentionally trying to destroy his career, to sabotage all the hard work he put in for years. What was wrong with him? The same skill sets that Rob used in his work life were needed for his personal finances, yet he was unable to map over the skills and the strategies for himself. He lacked the mental flexibility to make that shift. How much less stressful and confusing his life would have been had he known about his ADHD years earlier. It was only when he was on the verge of a severe depressive episode that he sought help, and his ADHD was diagnosed, with his depressive episode secondary to his ADHD. What was also discovered were some of the missing pre-skills that explained why he was unable to use what he knew so well at work for his own benefit at home. Some background facts. Rob was a highly intelligent male whose intelligence covered his many skill defects for most of his life. Only when he was pushing the very top of his field did things start to fall apart for him, and the truth of his situation revealed itself. The most severe of his missing skills was the inability to take learning from one situation and apply it to a new situation. He just didn't have that mental flexibility. It was as if his mind was unable to recognize that the same skill was applicable in both situations. If Rob had gotten a quantitative EEG, it most likely would have shown that there was significant hypoconnectivity between various parts of his brain that were the underlying reasons for the skill deficits. Rob's interest-driven brain worked fantastic at the office, but at home, he couldn't have been less interested in his own finances, and he viewed it almost as insignificant. The logical part of his brain that continuously told him to get his bills paid couldn't override the skill deficiencies that couldn't get him activated to do so. If you relate to Rob's story, here's your action steps. Focus on assessing and identifying your own missing pre-skills. Look at what you're able to do in other settings and see if you're able to map over those skills into the new situation. If you're not, you're on to identifying what's missing. Follow through on working on the development of the neurological connections that are needed for the parts of your brain to work in harmony and use information that each part has. Make sure to pay attention and make note of everything that you're observing to share with any professionals that you're working with. Self-management of your feelings of shame or embarrassment, of not understanding the source of your challenges until much later in life. Forgive yourself for being harsh with yourself as you take care of whatever needs addressing now and learn your missing pre-skills. And be sure to praise yourself for each new success and win so you encourage yourself to continue to do the work to move yourself forward to the next level of your success. Transitioning to our next story. Louise felt she was a mess. She'd been struggling to keep up for most of her life, and she didn't know why. In her mid-40s, she'd been living with the mystery challenges for most of her life. She kept telling her parents, teachers, therapists, and medical doctors all about all the problems that she was having, and yet no one offered her anything other than, give it time, or you'll outgrow it, or there's medication you can take to reduce your stress, or you're doing as well as your peers, so perhaps you're not as bad off as you're saying. Louise's parents even took her to get an evaluation when she was around 13, but the therapist said it was nothing more than puberty, and she would feel better when she settled into her emerging young womanhood. The therapist didn't diagnose her with ADHD or executive function deficits or anything because she didn't fit an important piece of the diagnostic criteria for ADHD, which was the age when significant symptoms emerged. And the controlled testing done didn't show her executive function deficits to be more than mildly disabling. Of course, they were much more than mildly disabling in the real world, not the assessment office. Once again, being bright was a problem for a proper assessment. Since no one seemed to be able to help Louise identify or assess what her challenges might be, she took matters into her own hands. She started to create workarounds and strategies for herself so she could keep up with her peers. In fact, she got so good at creating effective strategies that her peers wanted her to help them create specific strategies for them to be even more effective in their schoolwork. Louise knew that she was very creative and really enjoyed creating the little strategies for herself and her peers. She would imagine that inanimate objects came to life and had needs to be met. As she got older, her stories and strategies matured, and her characters were like good friends. When she needed to get something organized, she would imagine that her good friends were there to help her. They seemed to know things that she didn't, like where things actually lived, their homes. So as long as she listened to her good friends and put things where she was told to, everything went quite smoothly. When she tried to think it through herself and give them homes, it wasn't intuitive or organic, and she had a very hard time of it. It was as if her creative right brain was more effective at doing the work for her than her more analytical left brain. So she went with her strengths, and she made her life a lot easier. Louise found that just by letting it unfold in a more organic way was what was best for her. She was able to imagine superheroes that came to her rescue and helped her feel more secure in her day-to-day activities. Some background facts. Louise's mind was very animated, and she found it necessary to work in a more intuitive way than an analytical or logical one. Even though she needed to learn to plan and schedule and follow a plan and be flexible and think ahead and organize the flow of information and things, she also found it necessary to make up stories and games to do so. The art of play was her tool or modality of choice, and according to research, one of the best ways for kids and adults to learn something is with play. If you relate to Louise's story, here's your action step. Focus on knowing yourself well enough to determine how you're best going to learn these new pre-skills. Follow through on teaching yourself or learning whatever you're missing through engaging, fun, playful means with the support that you'll need as you move along. And self-management of your feelings about having lived for so many years not knowing the true story of your challenges and the strategies that would help you. Trust your instincts about how you best learn or get engaged in something and go with that. Transitioning to our next story. Luke and Lizzie had been blaming each other for years. After all, their married life had been so much harder than their friends were going through, and they needed to place the blame somewhere. There was so much drama in their lives because neither of them had any foresight skills or decent decision-making skills. Their accusations to each other were based on hurt and resentments that the other didn't consider the other before deciding. The statement is true enough that they didn't consider the other, but not because they were selfish or rude. Rather, they had no foresight, and they couldn't see the problems that lie ahead. They could see them for others, but not for themselves. Also, their decision-making skills lacked a level of maturity that one would think would have existed by the time they were Luke and Lizzie's ages, but they didn't. They were in their mid-20s, and their executive function skills still hadn't fully developed. They each had planning skills, but their style was different, and so they clashed with each other. Their lack of foresight interfered with their ability to plan effectively. Some background facts. This is a perfect example of the need to seek to understand first before seeking to be understood. Neither Luke nor Lizzie had any sense of the other and how they processed information and made sense of the world. Because they each lacked an understanding of the other, and didn't seem to have the skills to gain that understanding, they were at a loss. One skill that they lacked was the mental flexibility, the ability to step outside of themselves and see or experience the other separate from them. Every time they said that they tried to do this, they were taking their own biases with them, and it wasn't a pure view at all. Because they couldn't see each other, they would get into arguments where they would insist or be indignant, and they had a lot of trouble adapting. They also had difficulties with setting priorities and goals. In fact, they each had their own priorities, and because there wasn't any commonly shared criteria for setting the priorities, they clashed there too. If you relate to Luke and Lizzie's story, here's your action step. Focus on seeing the other with clarity so you can correctly interpret what you're experiencing. Follow through and make sure that you understand which skills are being missed from each of you so that you don't misinterpret what the intention of the other might be. And in self-management of your need to be right, you can either push to be right or be together. When you're so insistent that you're right, you aren't leaving any space for you to see the other person's point of view. Not at all. A favorite quote, William A. Foster said, "Quality is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, and skillful execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives." The question I have for you at this point of our journey together is, are you willing to train your mind to produce wise choices and skillful executions in the face of many alternatives? I hope so, because it's going to change your life forever. You know, it takes courage to own the truth of your life and transform it into something extraordinary, if it isn't that already. Acceptance isn't resignation. It's starting with what is and moving forward from there. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. No matter how you choose to have me serve your needs, it's an honor to accompany you on your journey and make a difference in the quality of your life. New episodes are released on Mondays and Thursdays, and as a subscriber, episodes are going to be in your feed by 1 a.m. Pacific time. Plus, you won't miss out on anything new and different that I create. Certainly a great reason to subscribe. Remember to listen for answers to your questions or just enjoy all the episodes. And guess what? You can rate the show without having to write a review. Imagine that. So if you're finding the content helpful, please take a minute when you finish listening and rate the show. It only takes a minute. And if you have a few more minutes, I'd be grateful if you'd write a thoughtful review too. And if not, just rating the show would be great. I do love hearing from you, reading every review that's posted and email that I receive, and I cherish your questions for the Ask Dr. B episodes. It means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little bit better every time we get together. So that's about it for today. All the resource links are in the episode description, as well as on my website for easy access. That is, if that's of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.